Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, this podcast is just a little bit later than normal, than we would normally put it on a Tuesday. I'm going to blame it all on you taking a little bit too long through that intro. So if you'd like to apologize to the listeners, you can, but, it's certainly not on me. If we've learned anything over the last few years, it's certainly never on me.
No, they say it's better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. I say, why ask for either? Just keep going. And I'm not even going to address the fact that it's my fault that we're late. And now the more that we talk, we're just making it later, which is the ironic thing about this entire podcast. The more we talk, the longer it takes. But, Tom, this is our rewatch of the game. I rewatched it. You rewatched it. 10 things or so that we have picked up, re-gleaned, if you will, learned, spotted, jotted down. I think, yes, it's the jotting that is the main point in all of this. And so, would you like to go first? Would you like me to go first? I will allow you, whichever you choose.
You go ahead and go first. You said you told me what you probably had the most notes on. I've got some notes on that, but you go ahead and we'll talk about that first.
So this is something that I found interesting. Then I actually had to go back and watch other games to see how much it was similar and how different it was. So of the 28 rushes while C.J. Stroud was in the game, 4 of them came out of the shotgun. And this is something where last year, the shotgun, all you're doing is running out of the shotgun. You're not, there's no read involved. You're just handing it off. Everybody knows it's coming. Guys are getting tackled for losses in the backfield. So in this game, they had 4 carries from under center, like ace formation, single back, under center, 5 from the I formation, 4 out of the shotgun. There's 1 jet sweep and 14 out of the pistol. And of those 4 out of the shotgun, 1 was a read from C.J. Stroud where he kept it. And so I went back and I was looking like, how is this? Have I just missed this from the rest of the games? And really, the number of shotgun runs has dropped each game. And something else with these shotgun runs that they're doing, like they did a little bit against Notre Dame and then more against Arkansas State and then again against Toledo, is the shotgun is almost, there's almost some pistol to it, because it's not just the back standing next to the quarterback. It's the back standing a little bit behind so he can get going downfield. And also there are constraints built in, be it a jet sweep or a blocker like Mitch Rossi. There's only really just a handful of just straight gives to the running back out of the shotgun right now with no other assistance or eye candy. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they're running the ball so well and that it's being more effective. And I don't, like during the game, it's hard to notice all of this stuff, but like the more you jot stuff down, you're like, hey, what about this? And then you go back and watch and you see this progression. Very, very interesting and very effective. And it's an example of the self-scouting that Ryan Day has talked about.
Yeah, and that's something that you go back to last year, and Ross Fulton on a bunch of those morning shows was talking about how they were so predictable, and it was like you just looked at the formation and it was like, well, this is what's coming out of this formation. And they've done a really good job breaking some of those tendencies and, using some of those constraint plays out of some of those formations to just sort of keep defenses honest and not let people cheat. And as a result of that, I have written down here, like when they're in that pistol, Mayan Williams, he's just going downhill immediately. And the offensive line looked, and, the implied caveat on all of these sentences is, it's just Toledo, but. And, Toledo is a better team than Arkansas State, and Toledo is, I think, in SP+, kind of right exactly the middle, like 2 points above average in SP+. So they're a very middle-of-the-road team in the nation right now. So with all that said, man, the offensive line looked really good. Mayan Williams running out of the pistol looked really good. Travion Henderson was just in there for that first drive, and he looked good when he was in there. Mayan Williams looked good when he was in there. Dallin Hayden looked good when he was in there. I mean, it was just, And, TC Caffey kind of made one out of nothing when he was in there later. But, the 3 scholarship guys, when they were in, it just very consistently looked good. And, I think that's a combination of there are pretty good running backs on this team, but also the offensive line is doing a pretty good job. First and second team offensive line is doing a pretty good job right now, blocking on the ground. And all the stuff you just talked about in terms of them not being so predictable based on formation and getting away from some of those tendencies. This is looking like a very good run game right now, and a balanced run game, not just reliant on one guy who's a home run hitter. All those guys are running the ball well. I mean, I was watching that game and thinking, boy, I wish I could go back in time and have like a 15-point bold prediction that Dallin Hayden will be the first 100-yard rusher on the 2022 Ohio State football team. I bet I could have gotten basically any number of points I would have asked you for that one. That was too bad.
Yeah, or Jaden Ballard being the third receiver to go over 100 yards, something like that. But yeah, that's a good one. Also, when we're talking about these plays last year that were predictable, running out of the pistol, running from under center, like they have built in the play actions have been deadly, and some of these shotgun runs are also just toss sweeps, like a toss out, and they're doing the play action off of that to Cade Stover, like even the jet to Emeka Ibuka, who was lined up in as a tight end for the touchdown run out of the I form, where they might run out of it, but you can't. It's not going to be a 100% thing, and that's what's going to make the play action even better and the rollout. So, just the creativity and the self scouting has been excellent. Tom, I think that's up to you now.
Yeah, so we're going to count that as one for each of us because I had a bunch of those things written down. Right. So if you're scoring at home, that is one for each of us. I'll talk a little wide receivers. I'm when I'm down in the field shooting photos, I generally have a sense for how close they are to the sideline because it's right in front of me, and I generally have a picture of where their feet are close to when they land. But the number of times they come down with the ball within an inch or two of the edge of the end zone is unbelievable. It is the amount you don't really have a sense for how much time they're putting in, over the summer and off season and just working. Not just during practices, but just going out and just running and just, it is like a sixth sense where those guys all knowing, and it's not just one guy. Marvin Harrison did it. Julian Fleming did it. It was really, really incredible and very impressive. And, to the point where when someone steps on the sideline, like Emeka Ibuka stepped on the sideline, when he had like a catch and run down the left sideline, it was like, oh boy, how did that happen? How could that possibly have happened? That and it's an inch or two, but just the amount of time that they have put in to be able to do all that stuff. Where Marvin Harrison, I think his first touchdown catch, watching it live, it was impossible to tell whether he got his foot down. So it's like that's how fast it all happened. And you look at the replay, the super slow-mo replay, and he gets it down, and it's like he's flying forward, and he gets his foot down, and it's like an inch from the sideline, and just the awareness that it takes to do that is just, I genuinely don't think people can really appreciate how incredibly difficult that is.
And half the time they're getting 2 feet down, which makes it even more incredible. I don't understand, although I do understand, Tom, because as I've mentioned on this show before, like growing up, we would practice sideline catches. We called them Chris Carter catches. And we basically have our toes, and it was in like my aunt's backyard. It's separated by a sidewalk. So sidewalk is out of bounds. That's a sideline. You got to keep your toes like just off the sidewalk. And then, of course, you fall onto the sidewalk, which is not the smartest thing. Maybe we should have used the sidewalk for the toes and then fall into the grass. But that's another story. We're country kids. But yeah, there are so many catches now that are almost like the Mike Thomas catch against Alabama, where it's just like they have eyes in their feet and the cleats are, magnetized to stay off of the sidelines or the end lines. It's really, really remarkable. And I know we're giving you give credit to CJ Stroud for a lot of these throws, and rightfully so. He's putting them where only the receivers can get them, but these would just be incompletions without incredible catches and incredible feet and just awareness. So yeah, those guys are good.
Yeah, and not to dismiss your incredible childhood achievements, but the difference between grass and sidewalk is super apparent when you're running on the grass, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I can tell where the grass ends and the sidewalk begins. And I mean, it's kind of like a baseball player, outfielders who you'll hear announcers talk about how it's incredible that they know where the wall is. It's like, well, when your feet stop running on grass and start running on a cinder track, it's like, okay, it's called a warning track because it's a warning that, hey, dummy, you're about to run into the outfield wall. So you kind of, and at that point, okay, 1, 2, 3 strides and I'm in, face first into the wall or whatever it is. There's no warning track. There's no anything. It's just, maybe out of your peripheral vision, you can kind of see where the sideline is and the red turf and the end zone ends and the white turf and of the sideline begins. Maybe, but that can't be very easy when you're also focusing on a football that's coming from, 90 degrees the other direction and you've got a guy kind of hanging on your back. Like it is. I think people kind of just take for granted some of the stuff that, even when you go, wow, that was really impressive play. It's like, no. I don't think you really understand how fast all of this stuff is happening and how difficult it is and how few people there are on earth that can do that kind of thing.
I advise everybody out there, just go run as fast as you can and then tell your legs to stop and see what happens. Because that's what these guys are doing. Like, now the legs have to stop and, now I've got to put the toes down. I can't keep running. I've got to get my toes in. So just go do that. Go do it in the yard, sidewalk or not. Just go run and then tell your legs to stop and see how quickly they can do that. And then also try to catch a football while you're doing it and get that toe down. They are remarkable, and I think they're only going to get better. My next one, let's go back to go to that running game again because DeJuan Jones averaged probably about 5.5 yards per carry in this game. Like every time they ran behind him, he's carrying a defensive lineman about 15 feet downfield. There are times where he's blocking 10, 12 yards downfield. And, just watching the game, you saw how often they went to the right and how successful they were with it. DeJuan Jones, Matt Jones were very, very good. And DeJuan Jones, when they just let him go, and that was something that Ryan Day talked about on Tuesday, like the guys like this power running style and they want to do it. And I don't know if anybody wants to do it more than DeJuan Jones because once you get him moving and get him started, good luck. I mean, he blocks everybody out and, then you've just got a running back that can go whichever way around him that they want. And there's such a big hole there. So yeah, he was really, really good in this game in terms of run blocking. If you want to just go watch and have some fun, like there are guys that they didn't have anything for him and he made them pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, forces mass times acceleration, right? Well, DeJuan Jones has some mass behind him and he can get going pretty quick. And it's like, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that's how you end up getting the video of, at some point he is going to block a dude into the bench. Like that is going to happen at some point this year. You can sort of feel it. I have a feeling I know which game he would want to do it in. We'll see whether he will be able to do it. But yeah, he has been very impressive. The whole offensive line has been very impressive. They have been very, very consistent to the point where when they put the second guys in and suddenly the holes weren't quite as big, it was like, wow, what's going on with? There are guys in white jerseys, touching the running backs before they're 3 yards downfield. This has been a very, very impressive start to the year for the offensive line, and we'll see what it looks like this weekend. I think that you're going to get a much better test when Wisconsin comes to town this weekend, and if the running game suddenly slows down, then okay, you can chalk some of it up to opposition the previous couple weeks, but. So far, I've been very impressed with the whole offensive line. Not, DeJuan Jones, yes, has been very, very good. DeJuan Jones feels like he's got the combination of name recognition and play where he's going to be a first-team All-Big Ten player this year. And I think there's a real possibility that you have at least, maybe Paris Johnson is the other starting first team All Big Ten tackle. I think that's a possibility, and you get 3-4 of those guys on the first teams and the second team or the third team. It feels like this is the year when you're going to get, there's going to be some postseason recognition and, maybe it's the Joe Moore Award, but it feels like this is an offensive line that is so far looking like they should be, looking like it's going to be a good offensive line year for Ohio State. My next one, let's see. I've got a long list. I'll go with something that I've talked to Ross Fulton about. Spencer Tillman, by the way. I have not watched a lot of Tim Brando, Spencer Tillman broadcasts, and other than Spencer Tillman lobbying for a targeting on Sonny Styles in a pro play where there was like no chance it was targeting. Other than that, like I thought Spencer Tillman is a fantastic color guy. He did a really nice job sort of explaining stuff and diagnosing stuff and pointing stuff out.
This was their best game by far that I've seen for years because I was not looking forward to listening to them, and I thought they did as good as they've ever done in a Big Ten game.
Yeah, Tim Brando is, whatever your mileage may vary on Tim Brando, but yeah, Tillman I thought did a really, really nice job in that game. One thing that he pointed out, which is something that I've talked to Ross Fulton about in previous weeks, is Jim Knowles sort of disguising the coverage, and he pointed out when they were doing it 4 across, they haven't done it 5 across at times in the past, where it's like all the defensive backs are just lined up and they're all 8 yards off the line, and what that does is the quarterback looks at that and there's not a tell as far as who's going to be the deep safety, how many guys are going to be dropped to be the deep safeties, who's going to be blitzing, who's going to be covering, what's the coverage like. It's a relatively simple thing that you just, someone has to backpedal and someone might be blitzing and you're going to be covering, other guys are going to be covering receivers, and are you in a zone? Are you in man coverage? What are you doing? You don't give anything away by just how you're aligned pre-snap. And, that was something that Ross and I have talked about as something that it's not a massive change. It's not a incredibly complex schematic thing, but it's just one of those little things that Jim Knowles has brought this year that you didn't really see the last couple of years, where you could just, you could tell pre-snap what Ohio State was going to do. They had stuff pre-rotated, and you were just giving stuff away for no discernible reason. So this is just, this was just like a good example of just one of those little things that Jim Knowles has been doing this year that has really, made this a much better defense than it was a year ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. It is interesting to watch and see the broadcast team learn about Ohio State's new defense and talk about it, and then share some of the stuff that they've talked to coaches about that scheme. I will go another route with Jim Knowles, which is something, and it's something that I think he confirmed on Tuesday. They were not prepared for a quarterback this mobile, and Daquan Finn of Toledo. And when asked if, hey, Jim, who is your scout team quarterback to simulate that mobility, the answer was basically, we didn't do that. And for one, that shows you the kind of confidence that Jim Knowles has in his scheme. But I still think you obviously need to have the speed, the experience with that kind of speed defensively, and they didn't have that. You saw several players get out of sorts and lose contain, or even not necessarily even lose contain, just lose Finn. And Knowles talked about how they would lunge after him, they lost their feet because they hadn't seen anything like that before, and this was a very, very new experience for them. I think Knowles clearly, he took the blame for that, and I'm wondering if they will change that practice moving forward, if they will grab somebody to be that guy. You remember Jalen Gill was that guy for a time when he was at Ohio State. He played a running quarterback at one point, and it's not like these guys have to be able to throw. They just have to be able to avoid it and give the feel for these defensive guys. Like, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Dak Harrison, they had free runs at these guys at Daquan Finn, but it's the escapability. When you can't simulate it in practice, and when you don't even try, that makes things even more difficult. That being said, you're not going to lose a game if that's all an offense can do. And so I think that's also part of his philosophy, because as he said, the big plays are baked into his system. Like, he knows it's going to happen. You try to limit it to 5 and you're going to be okay. And they did that and they were okay. But now they have something to grow on when they face a J.J. McCarthy, when they face perhaps a Bryce Young, somebody that can escape like that. Bryce Young can escape like that. I don't know if J.J. McCarthy can escape like that, but obviously he can move. But I think this was a good experience for them, and one that I'm wondering how Jim Knowles will react to it in the future.
Yeah, speaking of scout team quarterbacks not needing to be able to throw, the guy before Jalen Gill who did that was Tate Martell. So, this is something that you've seen over the years quite a bit. I actually had Tate Martell in my notes from the game because CJ Stroud started 9 for 9 and then missed a wide open pass to Cade Stover, and it was like the ghost of Tate Martell maintained his place as the only person with a 1,000 completion percentage with 10 or more completions. So that is your Tate Martell update for the week. The Finn thing was so interesting because they constantly had a guy there. It wasn't like he was running and just running free and they had failed to account for him. It was like there was a guy there, they just couldn't get him on the ground. On his touchdown, I think there were 3 guys who maybe got a hand on him as he was kind of like running through it was either his touchdown or the other 22-yarder, 23-yarder, whatever it was, where it was like, they were like, someone got a hand on him in the backfield. Someone got a hand on him as he was kind of going past the line of scrimmage. Someone got a hand on him a couple of yards downfield, and he just kept just sort of sliding, juking, not blazing past people, just being slippery. And, so having guys there, I think kind of is Jim Knowles' job. And then it's those guys' job to get him on the ground. And I'm sure they're going to change how they practice because, they had the guys there and they just didn't get him on the ground. So now you got to work on getting him on the ground. But yeah, that was, I think if you're looking for something to be encouraged about, you didn't have a lot of busts. There were, they had guys there and they just didn't get him on the ground. And, the long touchdown pass, the second long touchdown pass, the one on Denzel Burke. I mean, Denzel Burke was there. It wasn't a coverage bust. He just didn't make the play, didn't break on the ball and make the play. So, they have guys there. That seems like that's probably easier to fix than you've got constant busts and guys are running wide open.
The time that I saw where nobody was near Daquan Finn was the long touchdown pass, the first touchdown pass to Cameron Brown, or against Cameron Brown. Like, he could have run for 30 yards, and I thought he was going to, but instead he threw the ball to give you an idea of the confidence in his arm. Throughout the game, though, rewatching it, I did see some wide lanes that the defense was giving up. Now, it didn't necessarily equate to running backs making big runs, but yeah, Finn was just a different cat, and that touchdown run he had, Steel Chambers could have taken him down with near the line of scrimmage. He ran through his legs, and just some of those where he avoided maybe 3 sacks and still picked up yardage. There is no way to simulate that other than go through it. So maybe that's what Jim Knowles is thinking. Like, what are we going to do about it other than just go out and play and see how it goes? It's not, don't worry, we're going to score 70. We're going to be okay.
Well, he talked about allowing 5 explosives a game, and that's, if you're allowing 5 explosives a game and that's it, then you're going to win. Ohio State had 7 explosives 5 minutes into the second quarter. So, it's like they don't have to be perfect. They just have to keep, just don't constantly get torched. And, they ended up forcing forcing a couple turnovers and getting off the field. They did a pretty good job getting off the field on third down, where a lot of the plays, Toledo's plays, were just, it was kind of like a quarterback run here, a quarterback run there, a little bit of a busted play where he's, scrambling out and just kind of heaving one downfield. There was not a lot of, methodical down the field drives, which I think would have been a bigger concern. And one thing going into this week against Wisconsin that I thought was kind of interesting was how often, the running backs for Toledo really didn't do a whole heck of a lot. Right after halftime, they had a 15-yarder and an 8-yarder and maybe another one that was 8 yards, something like that, a little later on in the third quarter. But for the most part, they were just bottled up. The running back run game was bottled up. And this is a different offense than what Wisconsin runs. But, if they're able to account for the running back against Wisconsin in a similar way to how they accounted for the running back against Toledo, and, I don't think you're going to see the kind of quarterback runs this week that you did last week, where you have that +1 advantage. That, I don't know how much of the Daquan Finn runs against Ohio State really are going to be applicable to what they're going to look like this weekend against Wisconsin.
What should I talk about next? Here's some CJ Stroud stuff. This is not something new. That dude is incredibly accurate and makes some throws that are unbelievable. Now they stop becoming unbelievable and they just become expected. So when he does throw some passes that aren't accurate, you're concerned or you take note of it. I think he had 2 interceptions dropped in this game. One was legitimately like he threw it back across his body a little bit and No, it was the second down the seam to Cade Stover where the linebacker jumped in front of it, just dropped it. I think the near touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison, that was like the 1-inch drill over the safety who read it and just couldn't get it, and Harrison turned upfield. Like that should have been an interception as well. And so when you look at how well he did, Big Ten Player of the Week, 380 yards or whatever, and completing 20-something of 20-something attempts, fantastic and accurate as all get out. But Toledo left a couple of interceptions on the field, and I think it's something to take note of moving forward into Big Ten play, where CJ Stroud has all of the confidence in his accuracy, and he should, but maybe now needs to have more respect for the defense moving forward.
The one that you mentioned down the right sideline, I think it was to Marvin Harrison, where it was the 1-inch drill play, which we've talked about the 1-inch drill before, but Ryan Day puts a big square in net that's probably, I think, 8 to 10 feet tall. I think it's about 8 feet by 8 feet, just a big square. And the quarterbacks stand 25 to 30 yards away and will throw the ball, and the goal is to throw the ball 1 inch over the top of that net, because the net is supposed to simulate a defender, reaching up to try and get the ball, and you don't want to loop it over him because then the defender has time to react. You want to throw it just 1 inch over the net. So that's something that Ryan Day's done since he got to Ohio State in 2017. We've seen that drill for years. So when you see CJ Stroud make a throw like that, I wonder, is that CJ Stroud making that throw because he thinks he can make that throw because it's Toledo and he knows what they have out there? And if that's Joey Porter Jr. out there, well, maybe you're not making that throw, or you're throwing it a little higher and, giving yourself a little margin for error. Or is that a throw that he just kind of got away with and it was, that wasn't the intent? Because to your point, we've seen them intentionally work on that exact thing during practice. So, maybe that's something that Ryan Day is just kind of like, that's okay. We're willing to take that kind of chance to make that kind of throw. Or, I guess we'll find out if we see CJ Stroud make a throw like that again in the future. Because, if that's a throw that's getting graded poorly on film, well, then that's something you're going to learn from. But I watched that and I thought, I genuinely don't know what is going through Ryan Day's head when he watches that. Is that a good thing in his head or a bad thing in his head? All right, so let's see. I have a long list of notes and we're kind of combining a bunch of things. I had one where 7 times in 15 starts, CJ Stroud has thrown 4 touchdowns and a half. If you had not told me that, I would have said, I had just, heard that he threw 4 touchdowns and a half against Toledo. I would have picked that for bold predictions and thought that was worth 2 points or 3 points. And if you had done the same thing, I would have been like, yeah, that's great, man. That's a huge one. That's insane to throw 4 touchdowns and a half. The school record's 6 for a whole game. What are the odds he does 4.5 in one game? And it turns out the answer is basically 50-50, 7 times in 15 starts. That is insane. I don't even how? What? How? 4 touchdown passes in a half, and he's doing that basically every other start. Now, he's doing it against the lesser competition probably a lot, but I think he probably did it against Purdue last year. He probably did it in Michigan State last year. I mean, this is not just getting done to MAC teams. That is just, and that's just routine now. That's just a thing that happens every other week or so. That was one of those things where I heard the stat on the broadcast and I'm like, that can't possibly be right, but apparently it is.
Did you go and check yourself?
Well, no, I just assumed that they probably were right on the broadcast. I'm not their ombudsman, Tony, please.
That is a great stat, though. That is, there's no real way to describe how impressive it is other than knowing that that's not normal. And that's just something else that is not normal that he makes normal, and you start to take it for granted. And even before the game, we're talking about how this is probably going to be like one of those 280-yard first halves, and it was. And that's not, again, that ain't normal. And we should, people should appreciate it. And I think they do. We've got smart people that listen and watch the show, I think.
Were you looking for you to validate that? I mean, I can. I mean, you're not the only one who listens, so I'm sure it's true.
So my 5th one, it probably won't be my last one. Cade Stover's hands.
Uh-huh. I had this one too.
For a farmer, this dude has the softest hands. I don't know. I almost said I don't know that he's actually a farmer, which is like the worst thing you could say to a farmer. But the way he can catch the back half of the football, like that's what he's intending to do. Like and the ball goes nowhere. And it's amazing to watch him. And we saw the one catch in the spring game or whatever last year where he catches it out of bounds, and it's out of bounds, but it gives you an idea of what he could do. And now like he continues to show it week after week. The hands, the hand-eye coordination, just the softness. And again, I don't want to be talking about the softness of another grown man's hands, but in a receiver aspect, that it's a really, really impressive. And it doesn't matter where on the field he is. It's outstanding.
Yeah, the play where he caught it kind of like falling out of bounds, and it looked like he caught it once, and then he just somehow ended up with it in just the one hand. And I don't think he caught it purely one-handed, but again, that ball is coming real hard at you. That is not a nice looped throw. That ball is zipping at you, and just one hand just squeezes it, didn't juggle at all, just right out of bounds. And you keep looking at him and going, he hasn't been doing this for 3 years. He was doing this for a little while, and then he stopped, and he came back, and he left again. This is like his second really year as a tight end, essentially. And he's doing this, and he's turning into a legitimate playmaker on an Ohio State team that's loaded with playmakers. He's up there with, I think, the most pleasant surprises for the Ohio State offense this year, where the year of the tight end thing has been, let's pull back the curtain a little. It's a little bit of a bit, just a little bit. This is not the first year of the tight end that we have brought up on this podcast, and it's here we are 3 weeks in, and it's like maybe it's not a bit this year. Maybe this is the year that this tight end is really legitimately a part of this team. You could see Cade Stover. He had 3 big catches on Saturday in the first half, and if he's playing a full game, 6 catches. That seam route seems like that's going to be open a decent amount, and if it's not open, that's going to open some things up on the ground for them. So one way or the other, that's going to be a big part of a very productive Ohio State offense moving forward.
He has single-handedly made Jackson Smith-Njigba obsolete.
Is it single-handedly because he caught it with the one hand? Is that what?
Soft hands. Have you given all of your 5? Or
I have no idea. I'm completely lost count. I do have Jaden Ballard really fast. That's in my notes here. He's someone who he had the reputation of the guy who wears Devin Smith's number, who plays for Massillon, Washington, and he's the fast guy who runs deep routes, and okay, let's see it at the college level. And you hadn't really seen a whole heck of a lot, and then he made a couple nice catches on Saturday. The one in the second half for that long touchdown, when he turns on the jets, it is like you can see him hitting that turbo button. And he is someone who I don't know if it's going to happen this year because they've got a whole bunch of other talented wide receivers on this team, but you could see him sort of taking the top off the defense in the future, very much like Devin Smith used to. Just run that deep route, catch it downfield, and we'll see how he adjusts to deep balls. He hasn't had to really do any of that in games yet, but just that speed is like, oh boy, that could be a real weapon for this team at some point.
I'm wondering if he is the Z next year and Emeka Ibuka is the H, and you can get them all out there. Here's one that I liked. The jet sweep to Mayan Williams with Jackson Smith-Njigba in the backfield, acting as a lead blocker. I wonder what else comes from that. And we've seen Jackson in the backfield moving around, running around, and doing all sorts of different things. I don't know that I would have him lead blocking most of the time, but it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And really all of the motion that they do. And I really have always enjoyed the jet sweep constraints, because watching Wisconsin do it is infuriating because it has helped them for years. And it's like, why won't other people do this? And to see Ohio State use it effectively, it's like, well, it only took you a few years, and they've done some of it.
Well, on that play, I had that one down on my list as well. I mean, it just gives you such a different dynamic on the jet sweep too. Whether it's Emeka Egbuka running the jet sweep, that is one look. Mayan Williams coming around that corner on a jet sweep. He is not necessarily the deep threat that Emeka is. But boy, if you were a corner coming up in run support, I don't think you want Mayan Williams coming around that corner at you. It's just a little bit of a different dynamic, and I'm with you. Like I think you watch that and you sort of get the sense like, I wonder what they're setting up here, because it feels like there's something else is going to come off of this at some point, having Jackson Smith and Jigba in the backfield. And then I thought, I wonder if Jackson Smith and Jigba can throw, and then boy, that could be fun, or you show the jet sweep to him one direction and Jackson Smith and Jigba goes out leaks out the backfield the other way. You're setting something else up, and that might be something we see this week against Wisconsin.
Well, that was something that Ryan Day talked about on Tuesday, that you don't just put in plays, you put in packages, and every package has branches that you can do different things with. And so there's always something that you can do off of something that you put in. So that's why I'm also intrigued to see where this goes. One other one for me, the quick screen to Emeka Egbuka that went for about 30 yards and he stepped out of bounds and they reviewed it. That looks to me, and it's basically an RPO that is either a sweep to the right, because the entire offensive line goes to the right and the defense follows it. And so he reads like whichever way he wants to go. He either hands it off or he throws it out for a screen. They did it once that I saw in Notre Dame as I was reviewing these running plays, but just that the entire defense goes with the run action, and it's just two blockers against three defensive backs. And we saw Emeka nearly break that one, and all he basically has to do is get through those blocks and beat his man. And it's 3-on-3 basketball essentially, and it's like full court at that point. And if you just beat your guy right at the outset, you're going to go and dunk it. And so that was one I think we're going to continue to see more of, although we may start seeing the running aspect of it involved at some point.
Yeah, that's a good one. I had a note here. Tony, when was the last time they scored a touchdown from outside 5 yards from the I formation? What year do you think that was? Because that was TreVeyon Henderson on the first drive. I formation from, I don't know, the 6 or 7 yard line. And it was like, you see it at the 1. You see that on 4th and 1 sometimes. I can't remember the last time I saw a lot of I formation and a touchdown from that far out.
Yeah, I'm going to guess, and I'll have some I formation stuff for you after that, is probably 2010 or 2011.
That's about what I was thinking. It was like, I think that might be a pre-Urban Meyer thing the last time they did that.
Because I went and looked to find out when was the last time an Ohio State fullback carried the ball out of the I formation. And so I go through and look at the number of fullback carries basically over the years, and there were none until Zach Boren, who was a fullback running back in 2012. He didn't carry it out of the I formation at that time. He was still carrying it in terms of a shotgun, where there were times where he was lined up in front of Carlos Hyde, but offset. And so, whatever. The last time, Tom, a fullback scored out of the I formation was in 2010, the Michigan game. And that may have been the last fullback carry, actually, that I think about. And so today I asked Ryan Day, when was the last time you called a fullback dive? And he's like, well, I remember running a fullback dive back when I played. I'm like, so you've never called one? He's like, no, that was the first time ever. And because I was looking back, like, was it in 12 or 13 or 14 when he was at Boston College? Never, ever called a fullback dive before.
That is wild. And, have you I'm sure know, and listeners, I'm guessing, have heard people talk about jerk routes before, where it's a route combination that makes you look like a jerk because it's impossible to defend. That was like the play calling equivalent of a jerk route, because it's like, man, that is such an uncool thing to do to a defense. Just, you've got to worry about all these wide receivers and these, even when you're in kind of a bunch formation, is Emeka Egbuka going to leak out for something, or is Marvin Harrison going to go out and it's just like, nope, fullback, just come on, man, that ain't cool. That is not cool at all. Yeah, that is breaking a tendency. So now everyone has to watch Mitch Rossi film and worry about Mitch Rossi in the goal line. Boy, and I watched that and I thought, Tony, if there was a team they played late in the year who had maybe questioned toughness or man-bally, that would be, if that was, say, something of a signature play for the opponent, that might be, if they were in a position with a lead in the second half, that might be a real subtle middle finger to run that in, if such a circumstance arose. That was one of my first thoughts when I saw Mitch Rossi in a fullback dive. So we'll see how this season plays out and how that game plays out. But just file that one away, because it was like, that might be a real little wink and a nod thing if that played out that way.
Yeah, I asked Ryan Day about that. Basically, like, how much of this I formation that you're doing is tied into your desire to be a tougher team? And he's like, well, the players like it. And it's like, I don't think the two are unrelated at all. Tom, I've got two other things in my notes. I'm not sure how many more you have, and then we can be done. And this can just be quick. I'll just let you know what they are. Kyle McCord looked good. He threw the ball very, very well. Touchdown pass to Jaden Ballard, just steps back and just flicks it out there. Very good. Also, Jack Sawyer is becoming a problem for offenses, and I also think that's going to help recruiting, as Ohio State is now in on these like 3 5-star defensive ends, and there are ways to get everybody snaps and make everybody happy, and different types of defensive ends. Ohio State can fill all of these. They can check all of these boxes for all of these defensive ends by watching what Jack Sawyer does, watching what JT Tuimoloau does. Those kinds of guys, Zach Harrison, like, they're all different guys playing a defensive end edge rusher position that you can marry prospects to each of those roles.
Yeah, and I actually just talked to Mark Givler about that on the Tuesday episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. You can he just was down in Florida watching some of those, watching at least one of those 3 5-star defensive ends, and he talked all about how boy, that Jack role sure would fit him nicely, wouldn't it? And how you as he's describing this position to me, I'm like, this sounds a lot like what Jim Knowles wants to do, and doesn't necessarily have the guy who's like the prototypical version of that right now. So yes, that is probably a podcast worth listening to for you. And Jack Sawyer. I mean, you're starting to see Javonte Jean-Baptiste made some plays. Jack Sawyer was in there constantly. JT Tuimoloau was in there constantly. They were just. I mean, Zach Harrison had a bunch of pressures. I don't think he had. I don't know that he got a sack, but he was in there constantly. There was, when there was that sequence where they were backed up after the punt and they were backed up in their end zone, and it was just every play was just Jack Sawyer and Zach Harrison just flying at the quarterback, and just it was like, are they not blocking him? Like, how is this possible that he's getting in there this quickly? And just every single snap. So yeah, you are starting to see the defensive line look like the way that I think Ohio State fans have been kind of assuming, like, any day now, this is going to look like the 2019 defensive line again. And it's, they're doing it a little differently than they did in 2019, but the production and the impact is starting to show up in a similar way. I had a couple quick notes here. 287 yards and 28 points in the first quarter. That's it. I have no notes. 82 straight wins when scoring 30-plus points. We had talked about the fact that Ohio State, under Ryan Day, is unbeaten. They're 33-0 now when they score 30-plus points. But 82 straight games going back, I assume, to the Orange Bowl against Clemson. That's probably the last time they scored 30-plus and didn't win. So that was a pretty impressive number. And finally, thanks to the Toledo linebacker who took a defensive holding call to keep G. Scott from scoring a touchdown and having Tony win the bold predictions contest this week, you the real MVP.
That infuriated me because I saw it live. Made Ryan Day mad too because they drew that up for G. They wanted to reward him for all of the hard work that he's put in there. And but I'm just going to ride it. I'm going with it again this week and just put that out there. Now if you do it, then I'm going to have to say like 2 touchdowns. We're just going to bid this thing up. But yeah, that was unfortunate. By the way, Tom, do you know the score of the game when they had those 287 yards?
287 yards. It was 28-7. It was. Do you know what I picked for the final score for this game? Sorry, do you know what I picked for the score for this game? 42-14. Do you know what the score was at halftime? 42-14. Do you know who thought we were picking halftime scores and not finals? Me, obviously. That's my fault. I should have asked for clarifying questions. So I apologize. I will make sure I give you the correct final score now this week. So that's on me. Sorry.
What did we say about apologizing before at the start of the show? We don't do it here. That will do it, though. I thought, Tom, this is a pretty good show. I'm just speaking for myself.
I I mean, it's always a good show from my end. So, I think it's notable that it was a good show from your end. So that was good. But yeah, I agree. This was some of your best work.
Well, like a good show for me really stands out, is what we're saying. Doesn't stand out for everybody, stands out for me. But
it's like, you have the straight A kid and you've got the kid who's, the B- student. It's like, when one of them brings home an A on a spelling test, it's not really that notable. When the other one, it's like, boom, Tony, this show right on the fridge for you, buddy. Good job.
Thank you, Tom. I will accept your compliment. That will then do it for this episode. I want to thank you all for joining us as always. Check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Explore being a member if you would like. Check it out for a month and see if you like it. I bet you will. Also, you can find us on youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Subscribe, hit the bell, be notified. And again, if you're a podcast person, Tom, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, check that out. Subscribe to that and get your daily fill of Buckeye talk in the morning, but it drops in the early evening. That way, if you want to listen to it that day, you can, or you can listen to it in the morning as it was meant to be. It's like when the milkman drops the milk off at like 3 a.m. You don't need it at 3. You drink it in the morning, at like 6 a.m, right, Tom? Change the name of the show to Tom the Milkman.
Yeah, this is the 1957 equivalent of a podcast. Yes, it's exactly like that. So there you go. Yeah, we'll bring you some home milk. Just make sure you kind of shake it or stir it so that it's not just all the cream of the podcast right on top.
Right. And speaking of cream of the podcast, who are you having on tomorrow?
Well, this is this podcast will have curdled a little bit, but it's going to be Tony Gerdeman. He'll be on the show talking a little bit more about some of the stuff that we didn't get to. We talked a little bit about what we heard from Ryan Day and Jim Knowles. We're going to talk a lot more about that on the Wednesday episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning.
I look forward to it. Thank you all for joining us, and we will talk to you guys later.